There are stories that captivate because of their plot twists and elaborate settings, but there are also stories that captivate because of the way two people look at each other. Meteor Garden belongs to the second category, and the pairing of Wang and Shen Yue has become one of the most talked about duos in modern drama history. Their chemistry is not a coincidence. It is an intricate dance of timing, emotional openness, and unspoken communication that sets the screen alight. In this article, we will dive deep into some of their most electric scenes, exploring what makes them unforgettable and why their bond feels larger than fiction. The first spark appears in their earliest encounters, where tension mixes with humor and nervousness. Wang brings an energy that is bold yet layered, while Shen Yue responds with innocence that is not weakness, but quiet strength. In one scene, a simple exchange of words suddenly feels like a challenge, and the way their eyes lock turns what could have been a casual meeting into the kind of moment that fans replay endlessly. What makes this so effective is not what is said, but what lingers between the lines. A silence charged with promise. A rooftop scene follows later, and it elevates their connection. The city lights in the background blur into stars, but all the focus rests on them. Dylan stands with a kind of restless energy, his posture shifting between distance and vulnerability. Shen Yue approaches with a softness that disarms his defenses. They talk in fragments, almost afraid to confess too much, yet each half-sentence is more powerful than a full declaration. The rooftop becomes a stage where raw honesty takes shape, and the chemistry between them makes the air feel alive. Then there is the famous umbrella sequence. Rain pours down, the streets shimmer with reflections, and the camera closes in on their shared shelter. The umbrella becomes more than a prop. It becomes a world, a circle that separates them from the chaos outside. Dylan adjusts the umbrella slightly, so Shen Yue stays dry, and that tiny movement carries an ocean of meaning. She looks at him, surprised but touched, and their shared glance is worth more than 1,000 scripted lines. Fans cherish this moment because it proves that love is often communicated through the smallest acts, and the chemistry makes those acts unforgettable. Humor also plays a major role in their dynamic. In one playful food fight scene, the tension transforms into laughter. Shen Yue throws a playful jab, Dylan responds with a grin, and suddenly both are caught in a storm of amusement. What makes this scene shine is that both actors fully commit to the silliness, letting their guard down in a way that feels natural. This is chemistry at its most human, the ability to laugh together, to be unafraid of looking foolish, to enjoy the moment without pretense. Another electric moment comes in a corridor. The scene is brief, almost ordinary, yet it has become iconic. Dylan passes by with a controlled calmness. Shen Yue catches his glance, and in that single exchange, an entire emotional story unfolds. The chemistry works because the audience fills the silence with their own feelings, and that is the mark of great performance. A passing look becomes a declaration, and a few seconds of screen time becomes endlessly replayed clips across fan pages. The library encounter is another jewel in their shared crown. Surrounded by books and silence, the two characters find themselves face to face in a space that encourages introspection. Shen Yue's voice trembles slightly as she speaks. Dylan listens with an intensity that borders on fierce, and every pause between words is filled with unsaid history. The chemistry here is intellectual as well as emotional, suggesting that their bond is built not only on attraction but on mutual recognition. Of course, one cannot ignore the rain scene that has been etched into fan memory. Rain in cinema is often a metaphor for cleansing, renewal, or unstoppable emotion, and here it serves all three. Dylan stands still, letting the rain soak him, while Shen Yue approaches with concern and quiet strength. The sound of raindrops fills the gaps between their words, and every gesture feels magnified. The chemistry burns not in fire but in water, in stillness, in the weight of emotion too large to contain. Reconciliation arrives later in the form of a diner scene, and it is one of the warmest sequences in their shared story. Seated across from one another, they hesitate at first, unsure of how to bridge the gap that time and misunderstanding have built. Then comes the laughter, gentle at first, then fuller, richer. It is in this laughter that chemistry shines. because it demonstrates trust and forgiveness. Shen Yue leans in slightly, Dylan relaxes, and the invisible wall between them dissolves. What could have been a simple apology scene becomes a powerful testament to the healing force of shared joy. Another unforgettable sequence takes place in a waiting room. The tension is palpable, the silence heavy, and yet the chemistry makes it electric. They sit side by side, not speaking much, but every small movement conveys their shared fear, their hope, their unspoken connection. Shen Yue's hand trembles, Dylan notices, and though he does not immediately reach out, his presence becomes her anchor. The camera lingers, and the audience feels the storm raging within both characters. This scene proves that chemistry is not only about passion but also about the ability to carry silence together. And then there is the final moment, the lingering frame that seals their journey. Words fade, the camera rests, and the expressions on their faces tell an entire story. Dylan's gaze softens, Shen Yue's smile carries both relief and longing, and the chemistry makes the scene resonate like a final note of a song that refuses to end. It is the kind of ending that compels the audience to start over, to relive the journey, to once again lose themselves in the spark between these two performers. What makes all these scenes so mind-blowing is the authenticity of the connection. Dylan Wang and Shen Yue understand timing. They understand when to push and when to hold back. They understand that sometimes chemistry is about restraint rather than display. Their partnership is a dance of equals, where each allows the other to shine, where vulnerability is not hidden but celebrated. Fans across the world continue to debate their favorite scenes. Some argue for the rooftop, others for the umbrella, some cherish the playful food fight, others the quiet reconciliation. Yet the truth is that all of these moments matter because they form a tapestry of chemistry, woven with care, precision, and raw feeling. If you watch closely, you will notice that their best moments are not about grand gestures, but about subtlety, a hand that almost reaches out, a glance that lingers half a second longer than it should, a pause in speech that feels like an entire conversation. These are the details that make chemistry legendary, the kind of details that cannot be faked, the kind of details that stay with viewers long after the credits roll. So the next time you watch Meteor Garden, do not just follow the plot. Watch the space between Dylan Wang and Shen Yue. Watch how silence becomes a language, how small gestures build worlds, how chemistry is not about perfection but about honesty. Their partnership is not just acting, it is alchemy, and it is why audiences return again and again. Dylan Wang and Shen Yue did not simply play characters, they created a shared heartbeat on screen, and that is why their chemistry remains electric, timeless, and unforgettable. This continuation moves beyond isolated moments into rhythm, technique, and cumulative meaning, and it stretches each scene into a study of feeling, design, and audience response. If Part 1 illuminated the sparks, Part 2 traces the lines of light that run between those sparks. It examines how single moments connect to form a living relationship on screen. It explores the labor behind the look, and it listens to how viewers shape meaning as they watch. This is a long-form narrative meant to be read slowly or spoken slowly as a voiceover, and it is written to reward careful attention to texture, to gesture, and to the slow accruing of emotion. The slow accumulation of gestures, how repetition becomes language. When you watch a series with care, you begin to notice that certain small acts recur, and those repeats accumulate into a private language. A hand that hesitates before reaching for a cup, a way of tilting the head when listening, a little exhale as if releasing a held thought. These acts become motifs, and motifs become grammar. Dylan Wang and Shen Yue work within this grammar. They make gestures that are at once varied and consistent, and viewers register them as signs of continuity. When a motif returns, it carries with it all the moments that preceded it, and that is why a single gesture can feel like a chapter. This is subtle craft, a long game that pays off when an audience recognizes a repeated movement and experiences the comfort of recognition along with a fresh discovery about its meaning. The choreography of proximity, mapping movement across episodes. Distance on screen is not merely physical, it is moral and emotional, and the choreography of proximity is a carefully plotted geometry. Characters step closer when they decide to accept risk. They step away when they seek safety, and the spaces between them become a measure of trust. In a scene that spans 2 minutes on camera, the way characters move through a room narrates an entire backstory. Dylan Wang often uses a slow approach to signal intention, while Shen Yue changes the axis of her body to show recalibration. Directors stage these approaches with intention. They mark beats where a camera moves to hold a shoulder, or to allow an empty chair to say what words cannot. When the pair cross a living room or climb a staircase, their steps are part of a choreography that writes emotional geography into physical motion. Micro-expression maps, the geography of the smallest change. Micro-expressions are like cartography for interior life. They map feelings with tiny movements that a camera can catch and a careful viewer can trace. A flicker of incredulity, the softening of the lips, a tightened brow that dissolves into relief. These micro-shifts are often improvised within a take, and the choice to keep an imperfection is a brave one for both actor and director. When Dylan Wang allows a throat to tighten, or when Shen Yue pauses a fraction before answering, the camera that is tuned to these micro-details turns an ordinary line into a revelation. Learning to read micro-expression maps rewards the patient viewer because each small change accumulates into a portrait that no exposition could deliver. The role of silence, how absence of sound magnifies presence. Silence is not empty, silence is full, and the way silence is used determines the scale of feeling. In many of their most electric scenes, sound diminishes, ambient noise shrinks, and breaths become audible lines in the score. The absence of music can paradoxically be the strongest musical choice because it exposes the raw texture of a voice, the friction in a pause, and the subtle rhythm of a heartbeat. Both actors excel at inhabiting silence. They allow it to be a place where truth is tried on, and the camera frames that silence with compassion. The audience is invited into that quiet, but it is not passive. It is an active witnessing, and that is where chemistry deepens. Costume continuity as character memory, fabrics that carry meaning. Wardrobe is a kind of shorthand that communicates without speech. A scarf can become a symbol of protection. A jacket left at a doorway can signal presence in absence. Costumes that recur across scenes create continuity, and fans learn to read them as emotional punctuation. In several arcs, a garment moves from practical to symbolic. A sweater that was once warmth becomes a talisman of an unspoken promise. Dylan Wang and Shen Yue embody these shifts with subtle timing. They touch hems, they fold sleeves, they carry memory in the manner they arrange clothing. Designers work closely with directors to ensure that garments age and crease in ways that suggest lived in history, and that material truth is felt on screen. Lighting as emotional architecture, the way light sculpts feeling. Lighting is a sculptor of mood. It carves faces into planes, it renders skin into story, and it decides which moment will be exposed and which will dwell in shadow. Cinematographers choose key lights to reveal tenderness. They choose soft fills to suggest safety, and they allow backlight to generate halos for moments of exaltation. Dylan Wang often appears under crisp side lighting that clarifies intention, while Shen Yue frequently sits in softer pools that make vulnerability legible. In reunion scenes, lighting shifts like a tide, the palette subtly warms, and those changes are not decorative, they are narratively integral. Watching how light moves across a scene teaches a viewer to sense the invisible architecture that supports performance. Music cues as narrative memory, motifs that return like ghosts. A musical motif is an emotional fingerprint, a brief chord progression that a composer returns to in order to summon a feeling. When a motif reemerges in a different arrangement, it brings with it the weight of previous scenes, and a simple variation can reframe a moment. In their partnerships, certain musical phrases become attendant to particular moods, a motif for mischief, a motif for regret, a motif for reconciliation. Composers and sound editors place these cues with great care, and when Dylan Wang and Shen Yue move within these motifs, they seem to dance to a private orchestra. Fans notice motifs, and they come to associate a melody with a memory, and that is how music extends the lifespan of a scene. Editing rhythm and the tempo of emotion. Editors set the tempo. They decide how long a look should sit before a cut, and they calibrate the tension by rhythm. Quickened cuts create excitement. Slow-paced edits allow feeling to pool. For scenes that aim to be electric, editors often leave a beat just past comfortable. They hold gaze until the audience begins to feel the ache. Then they cut to a reaction that multiplies the effect. Wang and Shen Yue have benefited from editors who trust stillness, and that trust allows the actors to explore the edge of feeling without the safety net of rapid montage. The result is a rhythm that mirrors breath, and viewers feel it instinctively. Directing choices that coax truth from performance. Directors create the environment where truth can be found. They set obstacles, they choose the camera lens, they decide when a take is complete. A great director gives permission to vulnerability, and a director who knows the actors facilitates a rhythm of trust on set. In many of the scenes studied here, the director shaped a process that allowed improvisation to sink in, then chose a moment when an unplanned gesture could become canonical. Wang and Shen Yue respond to direction that is both supportive and challenging, and that dynamic yields performances that feel alive rather than rehearsed. Photographic composition and the story of frame. A frame tells a story by what it excludes as much as what it includes, and composition determines where the eye rests. Close-up frames invite intimacy, wide frames situate characters in a world, and negative space can speak of loneliness or of potential. Directors and cinematographers choose lenses to alter proximity. Longer lenses compress distance and suggest psychological closeness, while wider lenses reveal context and allow movement to narrate. Watching the composition choices across their scenes is like reading a visual diary, each frame marking a mood and a decision. Fan culture as active commentary and reinterpretation. Fans do not passively consume, they remix, they annotate, they create, and in doing so they enter into a dialogue with the primary text. Fan edits emphasize motifs they love. They abbreviate scenes into viral clips, and they augment meaning by layering music and captions. Wang and Shen Yue benefit from this ecosystem because fan activity keeps scenes alive and circulating. When a scene is clipped and remixed, the original is not diminished. It is reinterpreted, and each reinterpretation invites new viewers to the source material. This participatory culture turns private moments into collective rituals. The ethics of fandom and the responsibility of creators. With broad engagement comes responsibility. Fans have power to shape narrative reception, and creators must consider how their choices will be received. Responsible fandom practices include giving credit, respecting privacy, and avoiding defamatory content. Creators can foster healthy engagement by communicating with fans, by explaining choices in interviews, and by offering insight into process, without sacrificing the mystery of creation. Wang and Shen Yue have cultivated relationships with their audiences that are grounded in mutual respect, and that shared care amplifies the longevity of their scenes. Comparative readings, how their chemistry sits alongside other iconic pairings. Chemistry is often compared, and comparison can be illuminating without being reductive. Placing Wang and Shen Yue against other beloved pairs reveals differences in pacing, in staging, in cultural inflection. Some pairings rely more heavily on banter, others on slow burn tension, and each mode has its own pleasures. Comparative study is useful for critics and for fans who wish to understand the craft of pairing because it reveals how cultural norms and production practices shape performance. Technical rehearsals, and the magic of trial. Much of what looks spontaneous is the product of careful rehearsal, and technical rehearsals are where timing is tested against light and sound. Actors walk marks, they experiment with cadence, and they listen to the feedback of monitors. A single line can be tried in multiple ways before a director selects the take that best aligns with a scene objective. Wang and Shen Yue often find truth through iteration. They try, they fail, and they refine until the moment feels owned rather than performed. The small rituals that build trust on set. Trust is cultivated through small rituals, a shared joke between takes, a word of encouragement, a moment of silence to reset. These rituals allow actors to risk, and risk is necessary for vulnerability. When an actor knows that their partner will catch them, they are more likely to go to an edge, and those edges are where electric moments are born. The chemistry seen on screen is therefore as much a reflection of off-camera culture as it is of acting skill. How to watch actively, a guide for the curious viewer. For those who wish to learn from these scenes, here is a watching methodology. Watch the scene once for emotional impact, let feeling land. Watch again for technical choices like camera movement and edit points. Listen for music and ambient sound. Then watch a third time and track micro-expressions and costume continuity. Take notes if you wish and compare different takes when available. This practice will transform casual viewing into a study that deepens appreciation and sharpens critical tools. The long-term cultural impact, how a pairing can shape perceptions. A memorable on-screen partnership can alter cultural conversations about romance, friendship, and emotional labor. When a pairing resonates with a wide audience, it can influence fashion, music choices, and the kinds of stories producers greenlight. Wang and Shen Yue have had an impact that ripples beyond drama fandom. They shape expectations about chemistry, and they influence younger actors who study their work for craft. The economics of chemistry, how audience response informs industry choices. Commercially strong pairings attract investment. They drive rewatchability, and they can lead to reunions and endorsements. Producers watch engagement metrics, and where chemistry yields engagement, there is economic incentive to capitalize on that pairing. This can create opportunities but also pressures, and the actors must navigate a tension that can conflate private life with public image. Balancing market demand with artistic growth is a delicate task that both performers and their teams manage. Archival practices and preserving scenes for future study. Preservation matters. Future scholars and fans will want access to original footage, director commentary, and production artifacts. Archival practices include saving raw takes, preserving scores and sound mixes, and cataloging rehearsal notes. These materials illuminate how a scene came to be, and they offer invaluable resources for those who teach or study performance. Investing in archives ensures that the craft that produced electric moments is not lost to time. A meditation on rewatching and memory. Rewatching is a practice of memory, and memory is a living thing that changes with each viewing. A scene that once registered as heartbreak may feel tender in a later viewing, or a comical beat may gain weight as life experiences change how a viewer interprets it. The act of returning to a scene is both an act of affection and of learning, and Wang and Shen Yue offer many scenes that reward such return. A final long reflection before a closing call to action. When we study the electric moments between two actors, we are studying more than talent. We are studying a system. That system includes writing, directing, design, music, editing, performance, and the audiences who keep the work alive. Wang and Shen Yue are exceptional because they move within that system with integrity and courage, and because their collaborative choices invite viewers into a space that feels private and generous at once. Their scenes continue to circulate because they are made with care, they are photographed with intention, and they are performed with a willingness to be imperfect. That is the rarest kind of honesty, and it is the foundation of enduring chemistry. A catchy closing note and a clear call to action for the listener or reader. If this long journey through craft and feeling has moved you, and you want more deep dives like this, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share this article with friends who love thoughtful analysis. Leave a comment naming the scene that shattered your expectations, and tell us how it changed the way you watch dramas, and turn on notifications so you will not miss future episodes that unpack the technique behind the moments that stay with us. Thank you for listening and for watching, and for keeping the conversation alive.